Good morning, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us today in preparation for next week's Meet the Buyer. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Nikki Patterson, Interim Business Solutions Manager for Tourism Northern Ireland. We're absolutely delighted to be hosting the event again this year, and today's session will be hosted by Julie O'Brien, Managing Director of Rinda. Julie is an experienced product development commercial specialist with over 25 years experience in the tourism and hospitality industry. Today's session will be recorded and we will be taking questions throughout, so be sure to pop your questions in the chat box and we'll pick them up at the end. As always, you will receive a link to a short evaluation following the event, and it's really important to us to get your feedback and hear your views and comments. Before we begin, I'm going to provide some key updates on this year's event and then I'll hand over to Julie. Thanks, Julie. Okay, so this year's event is managed, I suppose, behind the scenes by the Business Solutions team, along with a number of other partners. So the Business Solutions team connects Northern Ireland industry with overseas buyers, focusing on group leisure and MICE. So all of the team will be there on the day on hand if you have any questions. And just to give you a quick overview, we have Gwen Beveridge, Conor Carberry, Dawn Corrigan, Maureen Dorr, Heather Gibson, Gillian Hunter, Mary McGee and myself. So we're looking forward to seeing you next week. Current status with 1 week to go. Appointment scheduling is live. There's 3 days to accept or decline meeting requests. Currently we've 3,000 appointments accepted to date. There's been a cap, the cap on the number of meetings has been lifted, so remember to finalise your schedules. On the day, try and arrive in good time, meet all your pre-scheduled appointments, ensure to keep to time and don't run over with your meetings. Use your breaks and lunchtime to meet and network with additional buyers and operators. The networking dinner is an excellent opportunity to expand your contacts. Just a note on that, if you haven't already signed up for the dinner, please contact our team, as spaces are extremely limited now. So some stats and updates from Meet the Buyer 2022. NI industry attendees. 91% found operators genuinely interested in doing business with them. 97% said the event exceeded their expectations. 79% rated the event as excellent, and 92% said they would very likely attend the event in 2023. Operators, top 3 objectives. 96% said it was to meet new suppliers and learn about new experiences. 93% said they wanted to increase their knowledge of the destination, and 75% want to extend existing programs or create new programs. So the resources available to Meet the Buyer, to our industry, our support resources. We have our Northern Ireland content pool, our Tourism Northern Ireland content pool. So you can go on here and you can download images, YouTube links, content links. There's market profiles on tourismireland.com if you want to do a bit of research. You can also go to our research and insights on tourismni.com, and where you'll also find a link to previous webinars. To stay up to date with international B2B market opportunities, platforms and anything that might be helpful to you, make sure you sign up for our e-sign and social media. So our social media assets for this year's event, we encourage you to use them, and you can go to the content pool on tourismni.com to gather these and to use them throughout the period. Okay, I'm now going to hand you over to Julie, who's going to run through the session for you, and I'll catch up with you later for some questions. Thank you, Julie.
Nikki, thank you so much. And I love the way you highlighted some of the stats from 2022, and it really does emphasize the kind of opportunities that are possible at Meet the Buyer 2023. So over the next 50 minutes or so, I'm going to be showing you how to go for it, how to maximize those opportunities so that you can win, commercial opportunities for your business and for your destination. So thanks so much, Nikki, and I'm going to take people through the content now. So as Nikki said there earlier, my name is Julie O'Brien, and I'm going to take you through how to maximize opportunities through Meet the Buyer 2023. And we're going to do that by looking at the following content. First of all, we're going to look at practicalities. Then we're going to move on to the Converve appointment booking system. We're going to look at some presentation tips. We're going to look at some verbal tips so that you can have a winning presentation that's going to help you win opportunities. We're going to look at the importance of follow-up, the power of you, because it's very important to know that you're at the center of everything at Meet the Buyer 2023. You are the one who has the power to win opportunities. And I'm going to give you some tips for maybe setting goals so you can make sure that you have a goal-focused approach when you go to Meet the Buyer 2023. So let's kick off now, and as Nikki said, if questions come to mind throughout this session, make sure and pop those in. We'd be delighted to hear from you, and we will aim to address those at the end. So let's look at the context for Meet the Buyer. So Meet the Buyer is Northern Ireland's largest travel trade event. 180 Northern Ireland trade will attend, that's you, suppliers, businesses, and 190 international buyers. So to attend Meet the Buyer, you must have an international address. You must be based in the international marketplace. The focus for the Meet the Buyer event is leisure tourism. You will find some buyers who also engage in business tourism, but the key focus is leisure tourism. And that means you're going to meet buyers like tour operators who engage in leisure tourism, DMCs, otherwise known as destination management companies, travel wholesalers who purchase in big volume, maybe lots of accommodation, and OTAs, otherwise known as online travel agencies. So lots and lots of opportunities at Meet the Buyer. So as we start to look at how you can maximize those opportunities, let's take a quick look now at some of the practicalities, because it's all about feeling comfortable and confident when you're attending Meet the Buyer. So as Nikki outlined earlier, it's of course going to take place on Thursday, the 23rd of March 2023. The location is the ICC in Belfast. It is of course face-to-face, which is wonderful. For those of you who might be arriving with an iPad or a laptop, there will be a charging station in Hall 1D. Do think about those practicalities, like how you're going to charge your iPad or your laptop so that you're not flustered on the day. The format is you'll have numbered tables. Each table will have your business name. Please be aware that you, the business, the supplier, you are seated. It is the buyer who is moving, and you will be having one-to-one meetings, so face-to-face meetings. The timings will begin at 8:35 with a welcome speech. The appointments will take place between 8:45 and 5 o'clock. There'll be a rolling tea coffee happening throughout the day in Hall 1D. Please keep in mind the tea coffees, because it can be an amazing opportunity just to have an informal chat with somebody, which can lead to an amazing opportunity. There'll be lunch at 12:30, and you heard Nikki mention the networking dinner at the Titanic Belfast. For those of you who have a place at that, it's also a wonderful opportunity to network and meet people who can generate opportunities for your business and for your destination. So to be really clear, and I would like you to arrive at Meet the Buyer 2023 with your house in order, that you know exactly the landscape you're going to be moving through, so you can just focus on delivering brilliant pitches then that will win you opportunity. So every appointment lasts about 15 minutes. I do need to make you aware though, I would be suggesting that you have your pitch, you can deliver that comfortably within 10 minutes, because the reality is within that 15 minutes, the buyer is also going to need time to move to their next appointment. Through the end of the 15 minutes, you're going to get a reminder, that your appointment is about to come to an end. So listen out to that reminder, because it's very important that you're respectful at Meet the Buyer and that you do not run over your appointment time slots. You will have 25 pre-scheduled appointments, my friends. That's 25 opportunities to win commercial opportunities for your business and destination. So bearing in mind 25 opportunities, lots of engagement with buyers over 15-minute slots, and I'll take you through how to really maximize those opportunities in a moment. So what's the prize? What's the opportunities you can win at Meet the Buyer 2023? Well, you can win FIT opportunities, so FIT, fully independent travelers. So normally these are bookings of between say 1 and 9 people, a very in vogue part of travel in the modern climate. You can win ad hoc groups, so exactly as it says, ad hoc groups that can take place at different times of the year for all different kinds of reasons. Maybe families or groups of friends traveling together, or maybe someone who has a special interest like foodies or adventurers. And of course, tour series opportunities as well, which are repeated bookings that happen over multiple dates. So these are the 3 key opportunities that can be won at Meet the Buyer 2023. I want you to keep in mind that Meet the Buyer effectively works like a game of Snap. It's about matching, okay? So you are the supplier, the business, and your job is to find the buyers who are a match for your offering. The more matches you find, the more partnerships you can create, and that is what leads to revenue generation and opportunity. So at Meet the Buyer, of course, we're meeting buyers from global marketplace, and it is your job to engage with those buyers so both you, the supplier, the business, and the buyer can determine if there's a match opportunity here. In other words, an opportunity to create a partnership through which you will look after the customers and markets, for this particular buyer. And we'll talk about that more in a moment. So at Meet the Buyer, the key ways you can create those matches are number one, via your appointment, so where you're seated at a desk and you're speaking to the buyer about your offering, so through these really valuable appointments. And the other, of course, is through networking. So you could just happen to meet a buyer at the coffee or at the dinner in the evening. They'll be wearing a badge, and you could notice that this is a company that you're particularly interested in. Maybe it's a company you didn't manage to secure an appointment with. So you walk over and you smile and you go for it. You introduce yourself, you have a nice conversation, you get their contact details, you get a small opportunity to express what your business is about, and you make sure to follow up afterwards so you can bring that opportunity into a confirmed booking. So at Meet the Buyer, you're always on, you're prepared to engage, meet people, find out if there are matches or otherwise. So it's all about, keep it in mind, a game of Snap at the back of your head. So the more matches you find, the more potential opportunities that you have. So now I'm going to ask you to take a look at the Converve appointment booking system. This system is key for having a successful Meet the Buyer. So just to make you aware, within Converve, there will be a workshop manual, and this is hugely valuable because when you download this, you'll have the contact details for all the travel buyers attending the Meet the Buyer event. So, even buyers that you have not succeeded in having an appointment with, you will manage to have, their contact details for afterwards. So be aware of that. As Nikki mentioned earlier, the appointments are now live on the system. It is really important that you're vigilant and that you're checking the Converve appointment booking system every day so that you're requesting and accepting appointments. If, for example, a buyer has sent you an appointment and you're not being vigilant, you need to be aware that that appointment will time out within 72 hours. So that doesn't really make a good impression if you've not replied or accepted that appointment. So please be aware of this. I would also ask that you make sure that your profile is really good on the Converve appointment system. It needs to be clear, it needs to be succinct, and it needs to be compelling, because those buyers will be reading through those profiles, to request their own appointments, and they'll want to know whether your business is a match for them or not, and they read this through your profile. By the same token, if you're going to request a meeting of a buyer, and you send out that meeting request, they'll probably have a quick check of your profile. So it'll need to speak to them and be really clear so that they know it's worthwhile having this appointment and accepting this appointment with you. So right now, the key focus for Meet the Buyer is that you focus on securing appointments that have the best match potential through the Converve booking system. And I would recommend, some key approaches so that you can make sure this happens. First of all, you really need to do really good research. So you don't just randomly select appointments, but I would carefully go through the profiles to really check, is this buyer a match for what I offer or not? You also need to be aware that sometimes, to be honest, the buyers do not write really good profiles. You, the business, you need to write a strong profile, but for whatever reason, sometimes the buyer does not. So you may have to go and research that buyer elsewhere, maybe online, or maybe you might ask, some colleagues in the industry about the buyer to really determine if they're a right match for your offering. So put a little bit of research and a bit of thought into who you're requesting appointments of, and know that that can sometimes take time, particularly if you're new to this. I love within the Converve appointment system the messaging system, because this allows me to connect with the international travel buyer before the live event. And let's just say I'm a business and I've gotten a request from a travel buyer for an appointment, and I'm reading the buyer's profile and it's not reading exactly as if they're a match for me. Then I might use that messaging system in this way. So for example, this is just a sample text that I might write. Dear Johan, thank you for requesting an appointment with me. I'm delighted to hear from you. I know from your profile that you're interested in high adrenaline experiences for adventure enthusiasts. I wanted to make you aware that we deliver walking experiences that are softer and suitable for people with low to moderate fitness levels. Can I check that this is of interest to you? So I'm reading their profile and thinking, gosh, are they a match for me or not? I'm just going to sound that out with the buyer through the messaging system. You might find the buyer comes back and says, no, actually, I am looking for experiences like yours, or thank you for bringing that to my attention. It's not exactly what I'm looking for, in which case you could go and seek another appointment. Within the Converve appointments booking system, there's also a My Match functionality. So this is based on the profile that you write and on the profile that the supplier writes. And if you go into show only My Match, it will bring up outcomes for buyers that are a match for you. And hence why I keep emphasizing the importance of having a strong profile for your business on the Converve appointment booking system. I would also suggest that you use the technology to establish a connection with your buyer before you meet them at the Meet the Buyer event. So be polite, present yourself in a positive way to that buyer. So by the time you meet them at Meet the Buyer, you've already established a relationship. And to be honest, they already have trust and faith in you. You're presenting yourself as being professional and friendly. So for me, I might write a message something like this: Dear Johan, thank you for accepting my appointment, or I am delighted that you've requested an appointment with me. I'm looking forward to speaking with you at the ICC in Belfast. I'll be bringing along some imagery to show you. You can name your experience or service type that we deliver in our beautiful location in wherever you are, rural or coastal or urban. So do write a little note to make that sing. Be succinct in your language, but really engaging. If you need anything in advance, please do not hesitate to let me know. Take care and safe travels. Bear in mind, we're in the business of hospitality and tourism, so it's important to show that we know how to care for people, and through the messaging system, we can already begin to illustrate that. Now, a successful Meet the Buyer is all about preparing a really strong presentation. And I'm going to give you some tips now for doing that. So the lovely thing about a face-to-face format, which you're going to have this year at the ICC in Belfast, is you can really choose your presentation type. You'll be sitting across a table, with the buyer in front of you. So some of you may already be preparing PowerPoint presentations, which will work perfectly fine. And maybe you'll show those on your iPad or on a laptop. Some of you may just print out, beautiful physical images, and you may talk the buyer through those, showing them what your business offering is and the kind of experiences and services that you deliver. I've seen some suppliers create absolutely beautiful storybooks where, maybe large books where you're watching, as the buyer, you're watching the business talk you through their offering through these really beautiful, well-selected pictures. So the most important thing to say here is that you, as the supplier, get to choose how you wish to present. You are the one in the driving seat. So please choose a format that suits you so that you can enlighten and delight the buyer, showing them what your business offering and experiences or services are. Just so you're aware, I've also seen people bring along props to meet the buyer, maybe people involved in sporting or that kind of thing. And it can be really, or music, it can be really lovely to bring something along that, that makes the experience tangible for the buyer. So you have a good think about that. But what I'm really emphasizing is, please don't think about this 5 minutes before the event. Now is the time to plan. So by the time you arrive at Meet the Buyer, you're going to deliver really thoughtful and compelling presentations that will really maximize opportunities. If you are going to use something like an iPad or a PowerPoint presentation on your laptop, and There will be tips within this that will suit all formats of presentations. I'm going to ask you to think about the following, please. This international buyer could be coming from anywhere. It could be a Europe, France or Italy, or it could be, North America, Canada. It could be anywhere. So you need to be mindful that they are very clear on who you are and what your business is. So please insert your contact details and be mindful of the international buyer. If you're putting in a phone number, for example, make sure you've got the international prefix. So contact details and business brand. Input about 8 to 10 strong images. I've seen people create presentations with 25, 30 images. It becomes very uncomfortable for them to present and very overwhelming for the buyer who's listening. Make it easier on yourself. Choose 8 to 10 strong images that you'll be able to easily navigate through, and that will allow you lots of opportunities to also engage with the buyer. So you're having a conversation rather than a frosty business presentation with that buyer. If you're going to use video, that's your choice. But I would suggest if you do use it with care. Don't use, for example, our 2 or 3 minute video that's going to maybe remove the engagement time with the buyer who really wants to connect with you. And if you're using the video, make sure and use it as a way to explain what your business offering and experience offering is. So in other words, to enlighten the buyer. And I'm going to ask you, please, when you use video, don't just press play and turn your head to the side of the buyer, because you've immediately created a disconnect between your business and the buyer then. So at all times, whatever presentation formats or inclusions you use, please make sure that they are designed to enlighten and engage and really connect with that buyer. For your presentation, no matter what format you use, I'm asking you please to get a really, really good map. It's really important that the buyer understands your location in Ireland so that they feel grounded, so that you route them. And I would suggest that you present that at an early stage in your presentation. Don't assume that they already know where you are. That's a really important point. Please, if you're creating presentations, take out the text. If you are putting in text, make sure it's only necessary words. Text-heavy presentations are very difficult for the buyer on the other side of the table to read. And in fact, they won't read it. They'll be listening to your words and trying to see the imagery within your presentation. So use that imagery to make your business offering and experience and services offering really sing, rather than having dense text-heavy presentations that just take away the meaning really of what the offering is. Please avoid badly formatted presentations that will reflect poorly on you and your destination. Make sure they're very strong. And please make sure that you practice aligning your visual presentation with what you intend to say verbally before the Meet the Buyer event. That's really important. So you literally practice this in events so it goes really smooth for you during the Meet the Buyer 2023. So I have some tips for you now for preparing your verbal pitch. So I've just given you some insights into recommendations for preparing your presentation. And I would suggest that you get that in order first. And as you're preparing each part of that visual presentation, you need to think about the words that you're going to wrap around that presentation that really enlighten and delight the buyer. Bearing in mind that you're going to be sitting in the ICC in Belfast, and your business is, likely to be located in another maybe destination or place in Northern Ireland. So from your desk, you have to enlighten that buyer and make them feel like they're at your place of business. So preparing your verbal pitch takes a bit of time, and I would really emphasize that to have a successful Meet the Buyer, it is really worth putting in that time and then practicing aligning your verbal pitch with your visual presentation. So I've worked out some verbal pitch steps for you here now, and I'm going to take you through those in more detail in a moment. So I've worked out about 12 steps for you, and you can practice your verbal pitch using these steps as the hooks for your conversation. Now, I will warn, of course, depending on the kind of conversation or meeting you're having with the buyer, it may not naturally flow in this order. But if you do practice, these particular points, you'll be well versed, well prepared to engage for anything that arises with the buyer at the live event. So the 12 steps, I'm going to take you through those in a moment, that I would recommend is starting off with a warm introduction and a welcome. showing the buyer that you've researched something about them, engaging what they know about your business, highlighting your location. Remember that map that I referenced a moment ago. Clearly defining your business offering. So what is the core thing that your business does? Enlightening, and look at how I'm using the words enlightening and delighting the buyer. Enlightening. They're not at your place of business. So the words and the images you use are the tools that makes that buyer understand what your offering is. Number 6, please clarify what you've available for sale. Sometimes you're listening to a supplier that's done a brilliant pitch, and at the end of it, you're like, but what were they selling? What are the experiences or services? Remember, you are there to sell. The buyer is there to purchase. Express what you've available for sale so that they understand what you're putting on your market stall. Number 7, be precise, concise, and do not exaggerate. I'll elaborate on these points in a moment. So just be, engaging. Do not exaggerate or say things that are untrue. It's very important that the pitch is, has integrity, that it's honest and authentic. Listen and engage. Think about that buyer attending 25 appointments. Imagine meeting 25 people who are just inundating you with content and formal frosty business presentations. It's not a very pleasant experience for the buyer. Whereas now think about that buyer having 25 appointments where they're having conversations, really trying to figure out if the supplier is a match for them, and also where they feel enlightened, where they understand what the supplier is offering. That's an entirely different proposition. At every Meet the Buyer appointment, you need to ask for the opportunity. You need to know whether there's an opportunity for you to do business with this buyer or otherwise. Number 10, you need to be clear on how you can do business. And I'm going to show you the kind of questions you need to ask in that regard in a moment. You need to be very clear on your follow-up strategy. I have a rule: don't show up to an event like this unless you're going to follow up. It's literally pointless. You will not be bringing the opportunity to a conversion, in other words, the potential to reach an actual revenue generating booking. And my last step is knowing how to price and contract. So for any buyer that you will engage with, you may need to know how to price and contract. I'm just going to touch on that in a little way at the end of our presentation today. So just a reminder that you're very welcome to put questions into the message box. I'd only be delighted to hear from you and to address those at the end as we're moving through today's presentation. Now, I want you to imagine yourself sitting at Meet the Buyer in the ICC in Belfast, and you're sitting at a table and the buyer is coming to you. Before you even begin to do your verbal pitch and presentation, I want you to think about creating a positive impression as that buyer approaches. So think about what's appropriate to you, how you're going to immediately engage and delight that buyer upon arrival. So I would suggest, if you are seated, standing up, smiling, greeting the buyer. Hello, it's so lovely to meet you. Maybe as they're sitting, offering a refreshment, some water, or maybe some fruit or something like that you have at your table. It's a very busy day for the buyer, going from appointment to appointment. So begin by showing a kindness, make it nice for them. Also, I'm going to recommend when you're preparing your presentation, your pitch, be mindful of the context. This buyer comes from the global markets. Be aware of their perspective. Be aware that they may have a different cultural understanding to you. So if you're referencing something that's local to your destination, they may not understand what it is. So it's your job to fill in the gaps. Don't automatically assume that they do understand. Be aware of language capabilities. In many cases, the people who attend Meet the Buyer, English may not be their first language. So slow down so that they can understand what you're saying. And it's worth noting that often English speakers, even from markets like, Great Britain, North America, say that we speak too quickly and we use too many idioms. So it can be hard to understand. So again, just be mindful, this buyer comes from the global marketplace. It's our job to enlighten and engage with them. And in some cases, we just need to slow our language down so that they fully understand. Now I'm going to take you through some verbal pitch steps And you'll notice that I've got some dance images here because I really do think about planning out the verbal steps, the pitch steps. I've just shown you the 12 steps I recommended there earlier, a bit like a dance. And one thing I want you to keep in mind is in this dance, you are very much taking the lead. It is not the buyer. So it is your job to enlighten, to guide the buyer. It's your job to set the tone for this engagement with the buyer. You are very much in the driving seat. So as you're sitting at Meet the Buyer 2023 in the ICC in Belfast, I want you to think about a waltz, and I want you to understand that you are the one who is leading that waltz. And I'm going to take you through the steps that you might introduce into your lovely conversation with this buyer to determine if there's a match opportunity. So this is really fleshing out those 12 steps for the verbal pitch that I advised there earlier. So firstly, like I said, in terms of the introduction and welcome, make sure and make that buyer feel instantly welcome, with a smile. So I'm putting in words here that are suggestions, but clearly I'm asking you to adapt all of this, with words that really suit you and who you are. So I would suggest something like, "Hi, Johan, my name is John Smith. I've been so looking forward to meeting you today to tell you about and you can mention what your experiences are in beautiful wherever your location is." So always referencing your experiences within the context of their destination. Before we begin, feel free to help yourself to whatever it is, a glass of water or some fruit or whatever you might have, at your table. So just a little kindness for that buyer. Number 2, demonstrate your research and gauge the buyer's knowledge level. So for example, in the green bubble that you can see here, I was reading up on your business and discovered that many of your customers enjoy soft adventure, artisan food experiences and connecting with local people. And you'd ask them, you ask them for verification maybe on that. And thank you for confirming that. On that basis, I feel that what we offer will be of real interest to you. So you could think about, based on the buyer appointment, lots of different kind of questions. Like, I see from reading your profile that you look after a lot of ad hoc groups. I'm interested in that, but I'm also interested in FIT. Can I just check, do you do FIT? I didn't manage to find that out. I'd love to hear that from you. So demonstrate that you've taken the time to do your research and show an interest in this buyer. That'll get you off to a really good start. Before you go off in a hack explaining what your business offering and experiences are, ask the buyer, for their insight. Have they ever heard anything about you? Assess how much the buyer knows about your offering. And you can do that very simply through my green bubble here. So can I ask, have you ever heard anything about us? In which case they may say never, or actually, no, I sent a group to you about 5 years ago. I haven't worked with you since. And again, you'll be able to gauge at which level you should then deliver your information. So notice how we're really encouraging a conversation with the buyer here rather than a formal and frosty business conversation, which is really not the hallmark of tourism and hospitality. Please highlight your location. Ensure the buyer understands where your offering is located and point to the map. So let me begin by showing you on a map exactly where we are located. And you're really clear about that location. I consider myself so lucky to be from here. Remember, your passion will instill a passion in the buyer. And hopefully one day soon, you'll be able to come and see where we are based for yourself. So notice how it's light, but targeted. So I'm trying to engage the buyer. Please clearly define your business offering. Ensure your business offering is crystal clear to the buyer. So think carefully about this message because the words you construct around this are important. So you should be able in your conversation to say, my name is, my business is, and very succinctly expressed, my experiences or services are, and what the insight is into these experiences or services. And this is the process through which the buyer can begin to establish whether you're a match for their customers and markets or otherwise. And similarly, you can establish if the buyer is a match for you. So I've just put in an example here. So it's a business that doesn't exist, but just for the purpose of illustration, my name is Carmel Mooney. I represent the Antrim Adventurers and our business is located against the dramatic backdrop of the Giant's Causeway. We offer land and water-based adventures from hill walking to stand-up paddleboarding. As a business that works in the outdoors, sustainability is clearly important to us. So everything we do is about supporting our employees, working closely with our community and safeguarding the environment. Obviously, that's a must for us considering the beautiful surroundings we work in. So sustainability, of course, a clear and really important message for tourism and hospitality, and therefore clearly important for this business to emphasize. So going on with that example then, so through these experiences, our fully certified instructors' guides create unforgettable memories for people of all ages and fitness levels. Enabling the visitor to connect with our local community is key for us, and we do this by serving picnic lunches with food, drink, produce by local artisans. Now, these are the kind of words I'm thinking about using, and as I'm doing that, I'm showing physical images that reinforce what I'm saying visually. And suddenly the buyer in their head will start to be creating pictures, visualizing what your offering is about, and clarifying for themselves if it's a match for their customers and markets. Please enlighten the buyer with words, images, and video if you're using that. So the buyer should be clearly able to picture the experience without being there. And when you're expressing your business offering and experience through words and images, please avoid, overloading the buyer with practicalities. So sometimes you hear people doing pitches and they're kind of telling you about all the stuff, maybe gear that needs to be worn depending on diverse weather types and all this kind of thing. But actually, that's the kind of information you can give the buyer in a follow-up or if they make a booking. For the purpose of the presentation with the buyer, of the engagements with the buyer, just focus on enlightening them, on making them aware of what your offering is. And I would say if there are practicalities that need to be communicated, for example, it can be very useful to communicate that you have ample coach parking for certain buyers, then just express those necessary practicalities. Otherwise, focus on enlightening and delighting the buyer so you can both establish if there is this match opportunity. Please clarify what you have available for sale so that the buyer can determine if they should purchase and you can determine if you have a sale opportunity. So this is really important. Be clear about your experience or services that you're selling. Now, in some cases, some of you may only have one experience or service, and in some cases, you may have multiple experiences or services. And if you have multiple, say 6, 10, 12, you are never going to get an opportunity to explain all of those to the buyer. So I would suggest you create one summary slide or image that summarizes, the 6 or the 12 experiences in one space, and then you can give the buyer an overview. And maybe just pick out the experiences that are particularly relevant to the buyer to explain then. So a summary slide expressing all of your experiences and services is really useful. If you're tight on time and you do have a lot of experiences or services that you sell, please, I'm really emphasizing the importance of giving a clear overview, selecting just the experiences or services that can give an insight. So I'm a garden, I offer 5 experiences. Let me tell you about our self-guided tour, and also very special experience that can be done with our head resident gardener. I'm going to focus on the 2 of those today, but in my follow-up, I'll send you information on all the experiences, and that will be enough to enlighten the buyer about what you have to offer. You could as well, when you present your experiences, just select what you feel best meets the needs of the buyer based on the research you've done on that buyer. So you could just pick out the experience that you feel really meets their needs. So be clever about how you do that so that you're not overwhelming the buyer. It is not about saying everything. It is about saying enough so that the buyer is enlightened and can establish if there's a match opportunity. So clarify what you have available for sale. So this is an example that I might use just to illustrate the point. We offer a wide range of bedrooms from classic to luxurious penthouses. I can send you on information about all of these. However, based on your needs, how about we focus on the luxury penthouses and the Meet the Artisan events we operate to showcase local talent from our area. So I'm just pulling out 2 of a whole array of offerings that I have within a particular business. And that would be enough to enlighten the buyer. I do not have to say everything. I would ask, please, that you're precise, concise, and do not exaggerate. I referenced that earlier. Do not overwhelm, do not bore. It's very hard going for a buyer, 25 appointments, just to meet people who are just really firing content at them. Present with integrity, please. It's really important for Destination Northern Ireland. Be authentic, avoid exaggerating, and also please be aware of literal thinking. So, there can be a tendency, to say we are the best, the only, the first, the last, whatever it is. But be aware, in some markets, there are literal thinkers. So they literally maybe Google that or research to see if what you've said is accurate. So if you're loose with your language, be aware that you could be dealing with a global market that's literal, and that's not going to create a positive impression. So just be authentic, be honest, have integrity, and avoid exaggerating. Listen and engage, really listen and engage. Is the buyer, their body language, they're leaning in, they're interested in what I'm saying? If what I'm expressing, can the buyer determine that I am a match opportunity for them? Are they asking me a question? Am I responding? Or am I just sitting here like a robot, literally firing content out with them, in which case I've created a wall between both of us. So are we engaging? Am I listening? Am I responding? I'm leading the walls. I am responsible for this. Bear this in mind as a business and for you as a business and supplier. Please ask for the opportunity. Never leave an appointment without knowing the outcome. Do you think that there's an opportunity for us to work together? I would really love that. And based on how the appointment is going, you'll be able to determine whether this is going, maybe positively, or you're unsure as you're conversing with the buyer. So for every engagement at Meet the Buyer, please be clear for each of your appointments. That was a definite yes, that was a no, not interested, or that was a maybe. He or she was unsure. I'm unsure as well. I need to research more there. Please be clear on how you can do business. So at Meet the Buyer, you meet the international travel buyer. So you need to establish how the buyer does business, and you do that by asking a question. So, are you interested in working with us? The buyer replies yes. So a question to ask then is, do you contract directly with us? Can I ask then, do you contract directly with us, or do you work with another travel partner for Ireland? Okay, so the international travel buyer may not actually be the person, in some cases they will be, but may not always be the person who's ultimately going to make the booking with you. So that's a really important question. So do you contract directly with us or through another travel partner for Ireland? And then if they say, oh, I contract directly with businesses like yours, then that is the person who will ultimately be delivering bookings. If they say I work with another travel partner, just say they say I work with a travel partner in Ireland, or it could be a travel partner in Great Britain who works with Ireland, then it's really important to ask for the name, the business name of that travel partner, and their contact name. So can I just ask, oh really, you work with X business? Can I just ask who you work with there? And if they say, Anna Maria, oh, that's great, I work with Anna Maria too, that's good to know. And you make a note about that. So that's a really important question to ask at Meet the Buyer in the international marketplace. And very briefly, the reason you would ask that question is, let's just say I'm a Canadian client. I'm a Canadian client. In some cases, I might go directly to the tour operator, who could, for example, be based in Ireland, who will book your business directly. And in some cases, it does not work like that. I could be the Canadian client. I may go to my local Canadian travel agent, who in turn books an Ireland-based tour operator, who then books the service with me. So in that case, the person who's making the booking is the Ireland-based tour operator. So in terms of if I decide to contract with the buyer, it is the Ireland-based tour operator in that case that I would need to contract with. So very simply, at Meet the Buyer, ask if the buyer has expressed interest in working with you. Can I just ask, do you contract directly with our business, or do you work with another travel partner? And you just make a note about that, and that'll clarify your follow-up for later then. Please be clear on your follow-up strategy after Meet the Buyer. That's really important. So at the end of your meeting, you end on a high note. Thank you for your time today. It's been so lovely to meet you and to share our offering. And during your meeting, you should establish a time, maybe in a week or 2 weeks' time, that the buyer would like to receive the information. And of course, you'd like that information to be landing in their inbox, not when they're on a flight, but when they're actually at their desk. So very important for follow-up that you determine when you should follow up. The approach for following up based on whether you've been told is yes, no, or maybe opportunity is important. And it's very important to follow up using the right route. And we'll just briefly look at this now over the next 5 minutes or so as we wrap up before we take questions. So please remember to put those into the message box, please. So when? During your conversation with the buyer, establish a time by which you should follow up. So maybe they might say, I'll be back in the office in 2 weeks' time, and you say, fantastic, I'll put a note in my diary to follow up then. And you send off succinct information, maybe in PDF format, that you can follow up via an email. If you said you're going to follow up, please follow up. Otherwise, it reflects really badly on your business and on Destination Northern Ireland, and we definitely do not want that. Based on whether it's a yes, no, or maybe opportunity, so the buyer has said, yes, I want to work with you, no, I don't want to work with you, or unsure, you should still follow up. And I've given an example of a communication that you might use as a follow-up for a no or a low opportunity here. So, dear Henrik, it was lovely to meet you at Meet the Buyer. I'm going to ask you to take time to read that in your own time. And you will notice that while I'm acknowledging there was clearly not an opportunity to work together, I'm still being professional and friendly. I never close a door, because you never know when an opportunity might arise in the future. And again, hi, a yes opportunity. Again, I'm being professional and friendly, and I'm stating, dear Henrik, there was an opportunity to work together and how I am delighted to do that. And I'm enclosing my follow-up information for the buyer so that they can review that in their own time. So like I said there earlier, you would agree a follow-up date during your appointment. And it's really important to know then the right route for follow-up. So I would suggest when you're following up information with the international travel buyers that you meet at Meet the Buyer, that you can send on your information with retail rates. And that's a good way to do it. Just include your retail rates. You would only really ever issue trade rates with the buyer that you're contracting with. So it's important to know the buyer who manages the contract and therefore does the bookings. And if at the Meet the Buyer, an international buyer has told you they work with, for example, an Ireland-based tour operator, it is also really important that you would reach out to that tour operator and make them aware of your business or service offering, because the international and let them know that the international travel buyer that you met has said that they were interested in that. So we're coming up to the end of our presentation today now, and I just want to touch on a couple of final key points. So firstly, pricing and contracting, which would be part of your follow-up. So firstly, at Meet the Buyer, you can just focus on enlightening and delighting the buyer. They may ask you if you offer trade rates, in which case you can maybe say, oh yes, we do. But I would suggest that you might not get into a negotiation on trade rates with an international travel buyer at Meet the Buyer. You can just follow up on that kind of pricing after the event. I would also suggest, by the way, that you never volunteer a discount. Your job is to enlighten and delight the buyer, to express the experiences and services that you have to offer. And you can, if you wish, use your retail rates just to give an indication of pricing to that international travel buyer. Don't rush in and offer a discount. Not in all cases, in many cases, but not in all cases is it requested. And that's really important. So when you're at the Meet the buyer may ask you if you offer trade rates, and if you offer those on a commissionable basis or what they call a net, nothing to do with VAT, by the way, discounted or a trade rate, which might simply mean if your retail price point is £10, for example, that you might be giving them a special price of £8. So it's a discount off the retail rate. So just to be aware of those kind of questions. But I don't want you to fret about pricing and contracting for Meet the Buyer event 2023, because the real focus on establishing if there's a match, enlightening and delighting the buyer about your business offering and the experiences and services that you have for sale, and establishing if there's an opportunity to do business. Information relating to pricing and contracting can be managed at a later stage when you have more time in your follow-up, or maybe with a specific call to a buyer. So just to maybe prompt that when you are engaging with the buyer, ultimately, if you do contract with a buyer post the Meet the Buyer event, they're likely to ask for a rate agreement, in which case your retail rate will be shown. And if you've given a special rate to the buyer, that will be put beside it so that they can compare their special rate against the retail price point. In terms of terms and conditions, you would just need to think through for post Meet the Buyer, maybe payment terms, cancellation terms, if you've got a free place policy and child policy. So what are the kind of terms and conditions that you'd offer? And I would bear in mind at Meet the Buyer, you could meet a buyer who'll just give you a one-off opportunity, one booking or two bookings, and you might not hear from them ever again. In that case, you can just keep it simple. There's no need to enter a formal contract. You could just follow up with an email confirming the price and whatever the terms and conditions are for that piece of business. So remember what I just said there. For the Meet the Buyer event, I do not want you to fret. The main about pricing and contracting, the main focus is on establishing if there's a match, enlightening and delighting the buyer. The buyer may ask you if you offer trade weights, in which case you need to be ready to answer that question. But you do not, you can nicely not get into a negotiation and just advise that you can follow up on rates later. Please, the power of you, be aware of this. You are literally the key to everything for Meet the Buyer 2023. You are seen as a reflection of everything. As the buyer is listening to you, they're trying to establish, is this person nice? Do I want to work with them? Could we be a good partnership? Are they trustworthy? Are they reliable? Would they let my customers down? Because it does not matter if you're the best business in the whole entire world. If you're unreliable, it's not possible to work with you, because buyers stake their reputations on the suppliers and businesses that they recommend. So you literally are a reflection of everything. So you do a good job at Meet the Buyer, even though you're in the ICC in Belfast and your business is from another location, and that that inspires confidence in the buyer. So that's really important. Be aware of your words, be aware of your behavior, be aware of your tone, ensuring that it's professional and friendly, because that will inspire confidence in the buyer and encourage them to work with you more, and also to choose destination Northern Ireland. So really important. So bear in mind what I just said there a moment ago. It's important that you come across as being reliable, someone who's capable of a true partnership, and someone who's trustworthy, someone who's easy to work with. So a decent, nice human being who offers a brilliant experience or service that will delight the international customer and marketplace. So we really are coming up at the end of this morning's session, and we covered an awful lot. But I don't ever like to go to anything without setting a goal. So we want to have a goal-focused approach. And I'm going to suggest some goals that you might like to set for yourself here now. But you think about, some own goals goals that you may like to set for yourself. So let's just say you're new to Meet the Buyer. You might give yourself, a goal to achieve really strong results on your verbal pitch. So every time you do a verbal pitch, you might score yourself 1 to 10. You might go, oh gosh, I think it was a bit of a 6 there. I'm going to try for an 8 the next time. So you might say, I'm going to try and aim for a score of whatever it is, 6 to 10 or 8 to 10, 90% of the time. So self-score, and that will keep you motivated throughout the day. Throughout the Meet the Buyer appointments, you might set yourself a percentage. So my job was to find matches. Out of the 25 appointments I have, or the 18 appointments I have, I'm going to try and achieve 60% matches, or 40% matches, or 90% matches. So to try and find buyers who are the right match for me. And if you succeed at that, great. And if you don't, then you will be able to raise that bar higher for the following year. Set yourself a goal for winning business. I want to win 5 ad hoc FIT and ad hoc group contracts. I want to win 1 tour series for 2024 or 2025. Or, maybe another goal, I want to win business for the low or medium season. I'm very quiet in Q1. I need to win business for that. Or I want to win business from a new market, maybe a marketplace I've not worked in before. And referring back to Nikki's point there earlier about looking at the online resources from Tourism Ireland, where you can see market profiles, about markets would be of interest to you. So maybe you'd like to set that as a goal for yourself. But whatever your goal is, I would suggest that you set a goal so you make sure that you have a focused Meet the Buyer and can maximize those opportunities. So my friends, that's been a whirlwind over the last 55 minutes or so, and I'm going to invite my other wonderful colleagues back in from Tourism Northern Ireland and ask if there are any questions after all of that. Well, Patricia.
Hi, Julie, thank you so much. Lots of useful tips there to help everyone maximise their opportunities at Meet the Buyer this year and also beyond, I think. Thanks, Nikki, also for giving us an overview of what to expect next week. And I know we've quite a few industry joining us who are going to be attending Meet the Buyer for the first time this year. So hopefully it's helped to set the scene for everyone and get everyone excited for next week. I suppose a reminder to everyone joining us today that we're going to be sharing a recording of this morning's session with you all, so you'll be able to review that again at your leisure, and we should hopefully be able to get a copy of these slides, Julie, as well to share with everybody, so that's great. I'm going to very shortly be picking up any questions, so if you do have a question and you haven't popped it into the chat just yet, feel free to pop it in now and I'll be picking up as many as I can this morning. just before we get stuck into that, I'm going to do two very quick polls just to see how you found today's session so far. So the first one will pop up on your screen now, which is, how would you rate today's webinar in terms of content and relevance to your business? So that's on a scale of 1 to 5. So with 1 being not relevant at all and 5 being extremely relevant. I'll give you just a second to select one of those. Okay, thank you. And the second one's just a very simple yes or no. So is it, do you plan to take any action within your business as a direct result of what you've heard during this morning's session so far? Thank you so much for taking the time to do that. It just helps us make sure we're on the right track. And it's my pleasure now to welcome back both Julie and Nikki for our Q&A session, and also to welcome along Dawn Corrigan, who many of you will know from the Tourism and I team, and she's our Meet the Buyer and Converve Queen. So hi, everybody. Thank you so much. We've got a few questions in here this morning, so we'll get stuck in. So someone has submitted here, what precise information do I need to bring? Should I bring physical visuals like leaflets and printed costs? What would be your advice on that? Or maybe come to you first, Julie.
Yeah, so I would suggest not bringing printed content. If you've got printed content, just bring one copy to show the buyer. They're not going to take it, and USB keys, none of that. They're never going to look at it afterwards. Focus on doing an amazing presentation. Maybe bring the example of what you'll use for follow-up and have that in a PDF format that can be emailed afterwards. So no need to invest in printing. And I would also suggest, considering that sustainability is like so important, it's also important to avoid that. But the buyer won't expect it, and it's not necessary. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll actually just jump in at that point as well. And with that sustainability in mind, I know in days gone by, we would have put sort of a notepad and pen on every desk, but we won't be doing that this year. We will have, a little bit of paper available on the side if someone's cut short. But I think a lot of people will record things digitally, and, we're not going to have that sort of paper everywhere that we would have had in days gone by. So we're all sort of taking that on board. So it's something to be aware of. Make sure if you do need a pen, bring a pen and bring your pad to make your notes.
Yeah.
So that's great. I don't know if you've any thoughts on that, Nikki, but I think sustainability is so important for us as well.
Yeah, I think they're often just across the trade in general with international operators. So anything that we can do to be demonstrating that, and I suppose just what Julie's saying, and to echo what she talked about through her excellent presentation, is you've really got sort of 10 minutes to make an impression in amongst a lot of other businesses. So it's almost going in with your vision and the experience, and then bringing it down to a very simple tactical level of how you'll follow up afterwards. So it's probably best not to inundate them with too much information or collateral or whatever, but using that time to really just hook them in and develop that relationship, I suppose, and create it.
Yeah, absolutely. So the tourism or the Northern Ireland trade will be at positioned at desk, so you will have a set base for the day. So although you won't want to necessarily bring leaflets and takeaways, you might want to bring something to bring your desk to life. I suppose that's the thing. Yeah. So it's more in that sense as opposed to sort of those takeaways. So that's worth bearing in mind. Great. And I know we mentioned earlier we have a few first timers joining us today who are going to be at Meet the Buyer next week for the very first time, and we know it can be a bit daunting. So if there's anyone who's a little nervous about attending for the first time, any useful hints or tips maybe, Julie, that you could share for them?
Oh yeah, I love the first timers, to be honest. And wait till you see, I mean, you walk into a room where you've got the world around you. It's such an amazing buzz and feeling. So look, all of us, we're all the same. As if it's the first time, all of us feel nervous. It's just a normal human reaction, So I would definitely suggest going to bed early the night before, having a cup of tea, nothing stronger than that, having a good night's rest. And, you'll probably find your first appointment is going to be a tiny bit maybe more challenging. It's just the first time you've ever done it. But after that, you generally find that people feel exhilarated by Meet the Buyer, because it's just such a wonderful opportunity to meet people from the global marketplace. And I would also suggest do the preparation that we've shown you here today. It'll mean that if there are any curveballs or something you have not expected, that you'll be easily able to deal with those, because you'll have the rest of it down and well prepared. So preparation is really the key. But my key advice would be enjoy it. It's just an amazing opportunity. And I would consider yourself lucky, because a friend of mine mentioned recently that they're not attending this year and they have fear of missing out. So you're getting there, take full advantage, you know.
Absolutely. Dawn, I think I'll come to you for the next one. Someone was wondering where it is on Converve that they'll be able to download all the buyer info. Would you be able to give some advice on that?
Surely the workshop manual will be available. It will be on your dashboard of Converve from the day before the event. We are just in the process of putting all of that together at the minute, so we will have that uploaded the day before.
Okay, fabulous, great. So keep an eye out for that and get yourself prepared. So we have someone who was wondering if it might be worth, I know you mentioned, Julie, about if you were doing a video, keep it very short. You don't want to waste your sort of your moment with the person showing them long videos, but would it be worth sharing video links in the message system in advance of the event? Would anyone take the time to watch that, or would that be a waste of time? I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
I would think if it's, I mean, I can't guarantee that the buyer will look at it, okay? So I would say it is worth including, but more importantly, it's important to frame a nice message around that. So sometimes I hear people saying, look, I'll use the messaging system, but the buyer didn't reply. Don't you worry about this. This is all about creating a positive impression. And, you know, I've also heard people say that on the day the buyer didn't reply, but they remembered the fact that I wrote that message, they'd looked at it. So, so by all means include, you know, the video link, but the wording you frame around it is what's going to create the connection. Yeah, don't let the product or the experience stand alone without you being part of it, is really the message. You're integral to the experience and the service, you know.
Okay, fabulous. We have a question here, someone wondering if they're allowed to bring pull-up banners or digital display screens to the event. Now, the way the desks are, everyone needs to be able to see all the rows, so pull-ups unfortunately are definitely not an option. But in terms of digital display screens, I mean, I think if they mean the likes of you know, a small iPad or something to bring something to life in their hand, then that's fine. But certainly it couldn't be sort of a freestanding. You know, you really, everything that you bring with you really would be contained to your desk. I think that's fair to say. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add on that.
Yep, any tabletop props you can bring along to bring your desk to life is absolutely fine, but anything must fit onto your table and not obscure the view sort of around you. So
yeah, we need everyone to be able to see the numbers and find their way around and not be no trip hazards. We do have someone who's messaged to say they were wondering if there was any advice on the best way to find a DMC to work with. I'm not sure if anyone can give any advice on that at all.
Yes, probably. Well, our team in particular in Business Solutions, we have a dedicated MICE Business Solutions officer. So we have established relationships with the DMC, so we can, number one, help with that, and we will be there on the day. And secondly, a number of the DMCs will be there on the day also. So it is definitely worthwhile making those appointments and getting to know them. I think the key thing is understanding the DMCs, how they work, and our team can help you with that. But actually, really, the best way is to get to know them yourself. So establish those relationships and then try to follow up with them, because they are really, you know, most of them are based in Dublin, but they are very pro Northern Ireland, and we've really strong relationships with them. So anything new, they're always on the lookout for something new. So firstly, I would say speak to ourselves on the desk and make appointments with the DMCs on the day, and then come back to us and we can help you point you in the right direction. But don't be afraid to reach out to them and try and just get as much face time with them as you can.
Sounds great. That's super. Well, that's all the questions we've had submitted today, but if anyone does have any questions, feel free to get in touch with us afterwards and we'll pick up with you. And I'm sure everyone's really excited to come along next week and raring to go. I suppose just a reminder, we will share a link with you with the recording for today and the slides. And thank you so much to everyone for joining us today. I don't know if Nikki, anything else you want to add before we sign off?
No, nothing. Just thanks to everyone for taking the time to join us today. Thanks, Julie, for your inspiring presentation as always. And we just really cannot wait to see everyone there next week. It's going to be fabulous. So looking forward to seeing you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Cheers, everyone.
Best of luck, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. and to the Queen of Convert.
Exactly.